today as we gather here for the Phoenix Model United Nations, a simulation of the United Nations where we come together to discuss, debate, and find solutions to some of the most pressing issues facing our world. As we embark on this journey, it is crucial to remember the significance of the United Nations itself. Established in 1945 in the aftermath of World War II, the United Nations was founded on the principles of peace, security, human rights, and development. It serves as a beacon of hope for nations worldwide, providing a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and collective action. In our simulation today, we have the unique opportunity to step into the shoes of diplomats representing various countries advocating for their interests. However, let us not forget the greater purpose of our gathering: to work together towards common goals, to bridge divides, and to strive for a more just and equitable world. As we navigate the challenges ahead, let us be guided by the principles of United Nations Charter: respect for the sovereignty, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and the promotion of human rights and sustainable development. Let us aspire to leave a positive impact both within the confines of this simulation and beyond in the real world. In closing, I urge each of you to approach our discussions with an open mind, a compassionate heart, and steadfast commitment to making a difference. Together, let us try to fulfill the promise of the United Nations to build a world where peace, prosperity, and justice prevail for all. Thank you. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone gathered here today for the Phoenix Model United Nations. Today, it is with great pleasure and honor to welcoming our correspondent, Mr. Moses sir, and head teacher of Phoenix Narmada ma'am. Thank you for being part of this Phoenix Model United Nations. Now, I would like to call upon to the stage respected head teacher of Phoenix to address the importance of Phoenix Model United Nations. Let us all welcome her.
Dear parents, Phoenicians, and whoever presented today, we are welcoming, and I am Narmada, head teacher of the Phoenix. Today I am honored to address you on the importance of conducting Phoenix Model United Nations as a part of Phoenix Governance Summit at our esteemed institution. At Phoenix Global School, we firmly believe in our ideology that global skills are every child's right, and in empowering every child to say, "Yes, I can." The Phoenix Model United Nations serves as a pivotal platform for our students to develop essential skills that are vital in today's interconnected world. Through this simulation, students are immersed in real-world scenarios where they tackle pressing global issues, negotiate with peers from diverse backgrounds, and collaborate to find solutions. Participating in the Model United Nations fosters the development of crucial skills such as diplomacy, negotiation, critical thinking, and public speaking. These skills are not only essential for success in academics and professional endeavors, but also for becoming responsible global citizens who can effectively address the challenges facing our world. Moreover, the Phoenix Model United Nations experience aligns perfectly with our commitment to providing every child with access to global skills. By engaging in this simulation, students gain a deeper understanding of international relations, global corporations, and importance of cultural diversity. Students learn to appreciate different perspectives, empathize with others, and work towards common goals, thus embodying our ideology of empowering every child to say, "Yes, I can." In conclusion, the Phoenix Model United Nations is not more than a transformative educational experience. that uplifts our students to the global society. And our students are learning essential skills which are vital to survive in this interconnected and complex world. It is a testament to our dedication that providing a holistic education that prepares our students to become a compassionate, competent, and confident leaders of tomorrow. I wish all the best to every Phoenician. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful words. It is with privilege to address such a distinguished assembly of young diplomats and future leaders. We will now have the flag presentation by our students.
Those who have
Switzerland, Mozambique, Malta, Japan, Ghana, Gabon, Ecuador, Brazil, Albania, United Arab Emirates, United States of America, United Kingdom, Russia, France, China, United Nations Organization.
Happy school days, days of share and fun. Here you go, feel and team days, the games that calls us on. Striving for mastery, hoping for victory, all of it with love for the work we do. Never get down by the troubles we make, brave in the hour of so defeat. For a life is the best, with the best to the best. Whether go or play, stand and miracle, and always say, I can, I ought, I will.
about United Nations Organization. Let's all welcome him.
To respect the corresponding sir, head teacher, dear parents, and all the students. My name is Prashant. I am studying 8th grade in Phoenix Global School. The United Nations, founded in 1945 after World War II, is an international organization with 193 member states. It aims to maintain international peace and security, promote cooperation among nations, and address global challenges. The United Nations consists of key bodies such as the General Assembly, Security Council, Secretariat, specialized agencies like UNICEF and WHO, World Health Organization. The Security Council, with 5 permanent members and 10 rotating members, holds primary responsibility for peacekeeping. The General Assembly serves for all the member states to discuss and vote on issues. The Secretariat, headed by Secretary General, carries out administrative functions. The United Nations coordinates humanitarian aid, peacekeeping missions, and development initiatives worldwide. It upholds principles of human rights, democracy, a rule of law through various threats and declarations. The International Court of Justice settles legal disputes between states. ECO coordinates economic and social efforts. The United Nations focus on areas like poverty alleviation, education, health and environmental sustainability. Despite criticism of bureaucracy and inefficiency, the United Nations is crucial for global governance and multilateral cooperation. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much, Prashant. With the great enthusiasm, now we are going to start our Phoenix Model United Nations. I wish all the best to all the students.
Here an introduction by the Secretary General of the annual report of the work of the organization. Now I give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations for Her Excellency Maya Angelina.
Distinguished delegates, member states of United Nations. International relations is a field of study that examines interactions between sovereign states, international organizations, non-state actors, and global issues. It encompasses diplomatic, economic, military, and cultural exchanges among nations. Key concepts in international relations including sovereignty, power, security, cooperation, conflict, and diplomacy. Major actors in international relations including national states, multilateral cooperation, NGO, non-governmental organizations, IGO, intergovernmental organizations like United Nations. Theories such as realism, liberalism, and constructivism to provide frameworks for understanding international relations dynamics. The globalization has transformed international relations by interconnectedness and interdependence among nations. The international relations addresses a wide range of issues including security threats, human rights, sustainable development, economic development, and global governance. Diplomacy, negotiation, international law, multilateral institutions play essential roles in managing conflict and promote international arena. Thank you, Mr. President.
All the heads and states of the government, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, honorable ministers, and all the delegates who are presented here. Good afternoon. It is my honor and privilege as the President of the United Nations 78th session. The UN has a wide range of global challenges including conflicts, poverty, hunger, disease, climate change, and human rights violations. It promotes international cooperation through diplomacy, peacekeeping operations, humanitarian aid, and development of organs. Overall, the UN serves as a forum for dialogue, cooperation among nations, and to work towards a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world. I thank you. The first speaker for this afternoon, I would like to remind speakers that this general debate has been established on the agreed basis of statement that should be no longer than 15 minutes to enable speakers to be heard as per given in this meeting. Now, I will give the floor to the distinguished representative of the state of USA.
start by congratulating Mr. President on his election as the President of the 78th session of the General Assembly. I would also like to thank the Secretary General of United Nations, fellow members, honorable representatives, ladies and gentlemen. Domestic terrorism is on the rise. Several attacks have been widely reported in the last few years. In May 2022, racially motivated individuals shot and killed 10 people in United States. The estimated 2022 age-adjusted decreased by 5.3% to 832.8 per 1 lakh persons from 879.7 in 2021. Stock markets immediately nosedived and almost every economic sector was economically damaged. The United States economy was already suffering a moderate recession following the dot-com bubbles, and terrorist attacks added further injury to the struggling business community. Some transnational criminal networks are long-standing and familiar, but there are also a number of transnational challenges such as water stress, human trafficking, and smuggling that are increasingly being cited as having a direct link to United States of America's national security. The terrorism poses challenges due to its transnational nature, with networks operating across borders utilizing advanced communication technology. The radicalization is a phased and complex process in which an individual or a group embraces radical ideology or belief that including acts of terrorism or ideological purpose. The challenges of radicalization and recruitment of individuals into extremist ideologies remains a concern. The United States faces an increasing number of threats to its critical infrastructure due to cyber attacks. The rise of cyber terrorism presents challenges in security critical infrastructure and protecting sensitive information from cyber attacks. The uniformed police and military personnel have become the primary targets of lone wolf terrorists, consistent with the relaxation of United States gun laws since the 1990s and the recent trend in mass shootings. The lone wolf preferred weaponry is now a staggering range of high-velocity firearms. The challenges persist in detecting and preventing lone wolf attacks carried out by radicalized online without direct organizational affiliation. The United States Constitution, especially its Bill of Rights, protects civil liberties. The measure poses challenges in counter-terrorism efforts. Includes efforts to strengthen law enforcement and judicial capabilities, border security, deepen global information sharing, counter-terrorist financing, improve crisis response, and counter violent extremism. This strategy is a unique global instrument to enhance national, regional, and international efforts to counter terrorism. The United States employs comprehensive counter-terrorism strategies, including intelligence gathering, law enforcement, and international cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the provision does not change the availability of a search warrant. The Act provides that warrant can be obtained in any district. Implementation of legislation such as the Patriot Act and other laws that enhances surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities. The United States economy was already suffering a moderate recession following the dot-com bubble. Some transnational criminal networks are long-standing and familiar, but there are also a number of transnational challenges. Consider state tactical operations, strategic levels of war, because conflict cannot be divided into discrete levels. The Iran timeline of United States government military operations based in part on reports by the Congressional Research Service. The statement in security capability to build in additional but related functionally to a basic security control and increase the strength of a basic control. Long-range fiber monitoring to secure your infrastructure, strengthening security measures at airports, borders, and critical
infrastructure to prevent attacks. This includes participants from different cultures and institutions. Within this multicultural context, some discomfort may arise as participants struggle to understand different customs. Collaborating with international allies and organizations to combat terrorism through information sharing and joint operations. Implementation robust cybersecurity measures to prevent cyber attacks and protect critical systems from terrorist threats. Cybersecurity basics apply to both individuals and organizations. Cybersecurity is the practice of protecting. In the United States, innovation, ecosystem, industry, national labs, startups, and universities collaborating across the science and technology. Focus on preventive measures and including intelligent community engagement programs to counter radicalization and extremist ideologies. Harnessing technological innovations for surveillance, intelligence analysis, and countering online radicalization. Ladies and gentlemen, root cause analysis is a useful process for understanding and solving a problem, addressing socio-economic factors that contribute to extremism, aiming to eliminate conditions that foster radicalization. Humanitarian assistance, including food, water, shelter, emergency, healthcare, sanitation and hygiene, and critical nutrition. Providing aid and support to countries affected by terrorism to promote stability and resilience. The Security Council recognizes that acts of terrorism and violent extremism cannot be prevented or countered through repressive measures, promoting alternative narratives and education to counter violent extremist ideologies. I thank you, Mr. President.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, the President of the State of Israel. I request protocol escort for His Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President and Secretary General of the United Nations, all distinguished delegates, and my dear friends. Terrorism incidents occurred in Israel. In 2015, 620 attacks, in the 470 are bombs attacks, and in 2022, 5,000 Palestine terror attacks were occurred in Israel. Israel is currently engaged in a war with Hamas and other terror organizations in the Gaza Strip. Following the massacre of over 1,200 were killed in a manner including torture, beheading, burning alive, and rapes, as well as the abduction of 240 hostages, and launching of 12,000 rockets, and continued attacks civilians. The Maccabean rule was a Jewish rebellion led by the Maccabees against the Seleucid Empire and against the Hellenist influence on Jewish life. The Maccabean Hussein is the corresponding series of letters which were exchanged during World War I, which the government of UK agreed to the Arabs' independence. Is a large region. After the war, the exchange of Sharif Mecca launching the Arabs' revolt against the Ottoman Empire. In 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, secret treaty between the UK and France, and action from the Russian Empire and the Kingdom of Italy. The impact and casualties in Israel is significant, particularly due to Israel and Hamas war of 2023. The war began on October 7 and 2023. As December 25, 2023, 54,637 Israelis and Palestinians were killed in Israel and Hamas war of 2023. It is estimated that 12,500 Israelis were killed in Israel and Gaza between October 7 and November 18. Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, and other Iran-backed groups pose threats along Israel's northern and northeastern frontiers. Israel's officials have been expressed concern that Iran is supplying these groups with advanced weapon systems and technologies. Cyber attacks. There has been a rise in cyber attacks targeting Israel and attacks by hacking groups tied to Russia. International threats. There are also threats within the Jewish activities, Jerusalem, and against the Christian sites and other areas in Israel. This is certainly true for the country like Israel, which faces the terrorism within and outside their borders. In the context of the country, has faced many forms of terrorism, like state-sponsored terrorism, non-state actors, domestic terrorism. The political leadership in Israel is significant, particularly due to the right-wing ideologies
and counter-radicalization of youth. Since 2002, the Jewish youth only now Netanyahu as Prime Minister and Avigdor Lieberman and right-wing as the leader and Naftali Bennett and Delegates Shakir. To combat these extremist ideologies to perpetuate violence in Israel is the complex issues and key points based on recent articles. Increasing extremism, cyclical violence, hate speech and violence, rise of extreme rights, repression of Jewish minorities, potential for intra-Jewish Israel's violence. To combat these extremist ideologies to perpetuate violence in Israel is the key points and to understand and promote and respect for all citizens. The Israel's national security law allows the government to the groups as terrorist organizations, giving it the power to criminalize and seize its properties. Human rights, discrimination, right of Palestinians, legal framework, human rights in occupied territories, Amnesty International report, and counter-terrorism efforts. In 2020, Israel experienced terrorist attacks involving weapon ranging and mortar to the vehicular attacks, small arms and mines. Israel adopted a new comprehensive counter-terrorism law addressing how to combat imaging while maintaining our commitment to the law enforcement. Law enforcement in Israel is the sole responsibility of Israel's police. A national force is responsible for all policing, including crime prevention, law enforcement, maintaining public safety, and counter-terrorism. These are the complexity and infrastructure of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel implemented one of the major security measures and how various Palestinians and Israelis perceive that implementation. Aviation security is the other priority of Israel's homeland security. The Israel's airports have been attacked and Israel committed to 3 goals. To prevent attacks on aircraft, to prevent attacks through arriving passengers. Israel has multi-faceted stand respond and to attacks arriving passengers and establishment of Israel's National Cyber Directorate. The INCD is responsible to protect the Israel cyberspace and to promote the Israel's leadership in global arena. Legislation. These provide a security measure and these security measures protect us from the cyber attacks and thefts and titles. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished delegate of Israel. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honor to welcome Her Excellency, Representative of Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The history of terrorism in Palestine is complex. Here are some key points. Early 20th century. In Palestine, in 1948, the Arab and Israeli War of 1948 broke out when 5 Arab nations invaded territories in former Palestinian Mandate. 1950s. In early 1950s, the Arab government organized paramilitary commando groups known as Fidayeen, which undertook raiding and sabotage missions into Israel. 1960s. The Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) was formed in 1964, marking a significant development in the history of Palestinian terrorism. 1980s to 2000s. The emergence of groups like Hamas and Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine (PFLP) further contributed to the history of terrorism in Palestine. Contemporary times. The Palestinian terrorism has continued into contemporary times with various attacks, suicide bombings, and other violent activities being carried out by different Palestinian groups. Mr. President, some of the most notable terrorist attacks in Palestine since Oslo Agreement 1993 include June 1, 2001, suicide bomber at Tel Aviv, 21 are killed and 120 are wounded by the Hamas. May 30, 2001, suicide bomber at disco in Netanya, 8 members are wounded by the Islamic Jihad. May 27, 2001, car bomb outside school in Jerusalem. 30 members are wounded by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP and Islamic Jihad. May 25, 2001, 2 car
Islamic Jihad, May 18, 2001. Car bomb in Netanya. 5 members are killed and more than 100 members are wounded by the Hamas. Suicide bomber at mall in Tekoya. 2 members are killed by the Islamic Jihad. Fellow members, these are just few examples of numerous attacks that have taken place in the Palestine. The history of terrorism in Palestine is extensive. The impact of terrorist attacks on Palestinian population has been significant, leading to loss of life, injuries and widespread sufferings. The Palestinian people are subjected to a collective punishment. For example, October 7, 2023, the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel resulted in a significant, leading to loss of life, including civilians and children, leading to a dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Furthermore, the impact of terrorist attacks on Palestinian population has been extended beyond immediate human toll in the Palestine. The ongoing violence has also led to the displacement of people, destructions of the home and the stifled economy in the Palestine. This cycle of violence has also hindered prospects for the peaceful resolution to the conflict of Israel and the Palestine. In summary, the economic impact of terrorist attacks on Palestinian population have been devastating, leading to loss of life, injuries and widespread sufferings, as well as contributing to a cycle of violence in the Palestine. The economic impact of terrorist attacks on Palestinian population have been substantial. The study results suggest that a successful attack causes an immediate increase of 5.3% in the unemployment rate. Mr. President, additionally, the ongoing conflict and terrorist activities on Palestinian population have been contributed to a destabilization of Palestinian economy, led to stifled economy, destructions of the infrastructure, and hindered prospects for the economic development and the growth of Palestine. In summary, the economic impact of terrorist attacks on Palestinian population have been resulted in an increased unemployment rate, reduced average wages, and a decline in the number of Palestinians are working in the Israel because of the unemployment rate. The ongoing conflict and terrorist activities on Palestinian population have been contributed to a destabilization of Palestinian economy and hindered prospects for the peaceful resolution to the conflict of Palestine and Israel, and hindered prospects for the economic development and the growth of Palestine. I thank you, Mr. President.
I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of Lebanon. I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Lebanon is located in a crucial part of the Middle East, which has made it a historical crossroad of various cultures and religions. We faced internal conflicts and have been involved in regional conflicts. For example, the country devastating a civil war from 1975 to 1990. United Nations has been actively involved in Lebanon, particularly in UNIFIL, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, which was established to help to maintain peace and security in the region. Terrorism has tragically cost many lives in Lebanon. The country has also faced significant economic damage due to terrorism. We collaborated with the European Union and United Nations to enhance its counter-terrorism capability. For instance, the Act, Advanced Counter-Terrorism for Lebanon Security, project funded by the European Union, aims to build Lebanese national capacity to react to terrorism threats. The government has developed comprehensive plans, such as National Action Plan for preventing violent extremism, and also we implemented security measures and intelligence cooperation to combat terrorism. The country has been actively involved in fighting extremism and maintaining stability. Lebanon's border security is crucial in preventing the infiltration of terrorist groups. The presence of a large refugee population in Lebanon poses a challenge in terms of monitoring and addressing potential security threats. Assistance is needed to manage and support the large refugee communities in the country. Lebanon lacks a comprehensive national counter-terrorism strategy, which is essential for coordinating efforts across various sectors. Mr. President, we require vital support from the UN and international communities to address the humanitarian impact of terrorism. This support is vital for implementing national counter-terrorism strategy, strengthening border security, and providing assistance to manage large refugee communities in the country. Lebanon recognizes the regional collaboration in addressing terrorism by working closely with regional organizations. Lebanon aims to enhance intelligence sharing and preventing the movement of foreign terrorist fighters across borders. Establishing mechanisms for sharing information and resources among regional partners is crucial. This includes training programs, technical assistance. Lebanon is committed to preventing and countering terrorism as well as violent extremes contribute to it in the line with its obligation under international law. The country has joined several counter-terrorism conventions, aligned itself with statements delivered by the Non-Aligned Movement of Islamic Cooperation. Lebanon recognizes the significance of education and community engagement in preventing terrorism. It emphasizes the need for educational programs that promote tolerance and critical thinking. Lebanon firmly believes that respect for human rights and fundamental freedom across all initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the support of UN agencies in areas such as border security, intelligence sharing, and preventing the movement of foreign terrorist fighters across borders. Lebanon acknowledges its need to strengthen its cybersecurity capability to combat cyber terrorism. This country is committed to develop cybersecurity measures. Lebanon is committed to disrupting terrorist financial network by enforcing robust financial regulation accordance with the standards set by Financial Action Task Force. Lebanon recognizes the cultural diplomacy and interfaith dialogues in countering extremist ideologies. The presence of a large refugee population in Lebanon. Lebanon is committed to promoting cultural exchanges in the country. We recognize the pivotal role of youth in peace building and countering violent extremism. The country is committed to enforcing and engaging youth in cultural and educational programs. Lebanon recognizes the media literacy in educational programs that promote tolerance and critical thinking. Education into formal and informal education to equip young people in Lebanon. Women inclusion in decision-making process. Lebanon recognizes the vital role of women in maintaining social peace and security in the country. Lebanon recognizes its commitment for preventing and countering terrorism in the line with its obligation under international laws. Lebanon recognizes the vital role of youth and enhances women's role in preventing violent extremism. This includes specific attention from the youth and enhance women's in preventing terrorism in National Action Plan from 2021 to 2023, recognizing them as necessary actors for maintaining social peace and security in the country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished delegate of Lebanon. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, the President of the State of United Arab Emirates. I request protocol escort for His Excellency.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, all the distinguished delegates, honorable representatives, ladies and gentlemen. The United Arab Emirates continued valuable support for counter-terrorism efforts as a member of the coalition and in command against in Arabian Peninsula, including the support the local forces of counter-terrorism operations 2023. Terrorist incidents. There were no reported terrorist incidents in the United Arab Emirates in 2023. Legislation, law enforcement and border security. The United Arab Emirates implemented a new crimes and punishments law in January, updating the penal code. The maximum punishments under the law for individuals joining terrorist organizations, including the death penalty and life sentences. Terrorism in the United Arab Emirates describes the terrorist attacks in the United Arab Emirates, as well as steps taken by Emirate government to counter the threat of terrorism. Ministry of Interior has released its road safety statistics for 2023, revealing that there was 343 road facilities this year across the country, a reduction of 10% from 2023, when there was 381 road collision related to the deaths in the United Arab Emirates. The principal cause of death in the United Arab Emirates constituting 28% of total deaths, other major causes of accidents and injuries. The number of traffic accidents and injuries totaling about 3.3 thousand in the Emirate of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Recruitment of fighters, procurement of weapons and explosives, communication between cells. Most terrorism cases involve a cross-border element. The transportation technology that terrorist groups is often cheap and widely available at most domestic response to terrorism stop. A component to prevent counter-terrorism cooperation between countries across border. For example, sharing real-time information, exchanging evidence. To ensure effective and efficient international and regional cooperation in criminal matters related to, we facilitate cooperation among member states worldwide. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, adopted by General Assembly, Resolution 55 by 25 of 15th November 2000, is the main international instrument is to fight against transnational organized crime. The convention is further supplemented by 3 protocols, which target specific areas of organized crime. The protocol is to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. The United Arab Emirates, in strongest terms in all of its forms and renews continuously commitment to combating terrorism and defeating extremist ideologies that fuel violence by terrorist groups. The threat of terrorism and extremism is a daily challenge that threats the security, stability of our region, while our political, economic, and social systems. Exhausting cyber provide irresistible to the attackers when the pandemic forces a rapid transaction to the work from home module. The lack of security awareness, training among employees, and understanding of how to run a safe virtual working. Hacking of services to disrupt communication by cyber terrorism attackers and steal sensitive information, defacing websites and making them inaccessible to the public, thereby causing inconvenience and financial losses. Challenges persist in detecting and preventing long-wolf attacks carried out by individuals, radicalized through various means direct augmentation. Lone wolf attacks is term used to describe someone who acts alone in a terrorist attack, without help or encouragement of a government or a terrorist organization. Striking a balance between national security measures and the protection of civil liberties remains a challenge in counter-terrorism efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Arab Emirates employs comprehensive counter-terrorism strategies involving intelligence, gathering, law enforcement, and regional and international cooperation. The Kingdom of United Arab Emirates to work closely with the United States and international counterparts to deploy a comprehensive and well-resourced counter-terrorism strategies that include security measures, threat detection, and measures to counter terrorist financing and counter-radicalization. Implementation of the legislation, security measures aimed at enhancing surveillance intelligence, gathering and countering extremist financing. On the legal front, the United Arab Emirates passed legislation to criminalize activities associated with terrorism, including Federal Law Number 7, 2014 on combating terrorism offenses. Engaging in regional and international military operations targeting terrorist groups to disrupt their capabilities and networks. The United Arab Emirates Army Forces are called the Dubai Defense Force, which is composed of the Land Force, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Border Guard. The Dubai Defense Force is responsible for protecting and defending Dubai's borders and territorial threats, strengthening security measures at borders, airports, and critical infrastructure to prevent and respond to terrorist threats, collaborating with the neighboring global allies to combat terrorism through information sharing and joint operations, implementing robust cybersecurity measures to prevent cyber attacks and protect the critical system from terrorist threats. The United Arab Emirates cybersecurity vision not only addresses present challenges but sets the stage for a secure digital future spanning the next 50 years. Its proactive cybersecurity vision strategy against digital crime is underpinned by government support, cutting-edge legislation, defenses, and guidance. Our future strategies in the United Arab Emirates focus on preventive measures including community engagement programs to counter radicalization and extremist ideologies. The United Arab Emirates strategy for the future will recover the future of capital and use the future of technology and smart software, the future of sustainability, environment, and climate change. Embracing technological innovations for surveillance, intelligence, analysis, and countering online radicalization. Believing that innovation is the human investment, the United Arab Emirates leadership emphasizes its importance across all sectors through the United Arab Emirates Vision 2021. Innovation, research, science, and technology will form the pillars of a knowledge. Strengthening information sharing between agencies for international partners for more effective counter-terrorism operations. The United Arab the strategy aims to improve the quality of life for citizens, enhance government efficiency, and accelerate economic growth. The United Arab Emirates government has been investing is to drive innovation, addressing socio-economic factors that contribute to extremism and working to eliminate conditions that foster radicalization. Salim A. Zahab to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates called on international community address the root causes of extremism, including countering disinformation on internet and social media, providing aid and support countries affected by terrorism to promote stability and resilience. In the coming years, the United Arab Emirates aims to support national development, humanitarian, and charity organizations whose work in foreign assistance complements the United Arab Emirates government and its institutions, promoting alternative narratives and education to counter violent extremist ideologies. The center is a partnership between the United Arab Emirates and United States to counter violent extremist terrorist messaging in the online space, ensuring counter-terrorism measures uphold civil liberties, avoiding infringements on individuals' freedoms. The Constitution provides for limited freedom, including for members of press and other media. I thank you, Mr. President.
On the behalf of the General Assembly, I am honored to welcome Her Excellency, representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, honorable representatives, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. China is in the third place of tuberculosis. In 2019, there was about 833,000 new TB cases in China with an incident rate of 58 by 1 lakh. The China also has the highest latent TB infections and TBI, burdened globally with approximately 350 million people are facing the disease tuberculosis. Worldwide, it was estimated that the TB is in the second highest leading infectious killer after the COVID-19 above HIV and AIDS. Worldwide, it was estimated that 10.6 million people are facing the disease tuberculosis. It includes 5.8 million men, 3.5 million women, and 1.3 million children are facing the disease tuberculosis. The China is the main land of TB from 2014 to 2018. MTWR, methods and multi-scale geographically weighted regression. The tuberculosis is mostly occurs in
adults in their most productive years. However, all age groups are at risk with tuberculosis. Over 80% cases and deaths are in low and middle income countries. The tuberculosis is occurs in most parts of the world and it is occurs in each and every part of the world. The massive population movements make the people particularly vulnerable. This tend to be displaced by people, refugees, asylum seekers, and other groups such as illegal immigrants, migratory workers, cross-border population, orphanages, and homeless children. The multi-drug resistant tuberculosis (MDR-TB) is caused by an organism that is resistant to at least rifampicin and isoniazid are the two most potent TB drugs. Extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis (XDR-TB) is a very rare type of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis (MDR-TB). Globally, 2021, it was estimated that 114% were MDR-TB, 282% were pre-XDR-TB, and 29% were XDR-TB, and address the stigma associated with leading to delayed diagnosis and treatment initiation. It enhances the risk of household contact transmission into community transmission. Hence, addressing the stigma is one of the key prevention of TB transmission. Mr. President, the challenges of the tuberculosis are the high patient burden, weak laboratory specimen reference system, shortage of trained personnel, and frequent interruptions in laboratory supply were the major challenges of TB diagnosis. The TTMS, Tuberculosis Treatment Management Services, TTMS in Southwest China, still need further improvement, and this study highlighted the specific barriers to TTMS in the delivery of PHC sector. The China is the second highest caseload of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis and MDR-TB in the world, and it includes the specific barriers to TTMS in the delivery of PHC sector. And it was estimated that the China is in the second highest caseload of multi-resistant tuberculosis MDR-TB. In 2009, the Chinese government was decided to plan the prevention and control for the MDR-TB, and in the same year have the prevention for MDR-TB. And after the 2 decades of international efforts of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, the deaths of wildlife population per year has increased by 45% since 1990, and incident rates new cases per population per year has also fallen down in most parts of the world. And it was estimated that the tuberculosis is in the second highest leading infectious killer after the COVID-19 above HIV and AIDS. And after the 2 decades of international effort of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis MDR-TB, deaths for wildlife population per year has decreased by 45% since 1990, and incident rates new cases per wildlife population per year has also fallen down in most parts of the world. And for that, the measures we taken to eradicate the tuberculosis are: the good news is that the TB is curable and preventable. But however, the China is still in the 30 high burden tuberculosis countries in the world. For that, the total top scale of anti-TB drugs in China during 2010 and 2014 were ethambutol 263.75 tons, pyrazinamide 249.85 tons, rifampicin 155.59 tons, and isoniazid 142.42 tons. Especially in this, 59% are the cure rates with a rate of just 52% before the drugs was launched in 1991. The AI and machine learning algorithms can help to examine the large amounts of medical data to improve the speed and accuracy of the TB diagnosis. And our future strategies of the tuberculosis are the DOTS, Directly Observed Treatment Short Course. DOTS is also called as TB DOTS, is the name given to the tuberculosis TB control strategy, which was recommended by World Organization WHO. The DOT means that a trained healthcare worker, excluding a family member, provides the prescribed TB drugs to the patient and motivates the patient to swallow each and every dose. The China has transitioned its medical tuberculosis control program by Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC) into an integrated horizontal CDC tuberculosis. Over the past 30 years, due to the strong leadership and support of the government, the country has scaled up its country's China's tuberculosis. The tax for population per year has decreased by 45%, and although elimination of the tuberculosis is one of the sustainable development targets to be achieved by 2030 by the world. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of China. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honored to welcome Her Excellency, Representative of India.
Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. India is in the first place in the tuberculosis as the worldwide with 28%. It is a curable disease which kills us. Tuberculosis is the second leading infectious killer after the COVID-19. The group of people are high risk of getting this tuberculosis is homeless persons, injection drug users, and people with HIV. Tuberculosis mostly affects adults in their most years. However, all age groups are at risk of getting this tuberculosis. 80% of cases and deaths are in the low in middle income. MDR-TB and XDR-TB. MDR-TB, multi-drug resistance tuberculosis, extensively drug resistance tuberculosis. These are a type of resistance which is related to the tuberculosis. Major challenges of getting this tuberculosis is lack of awareness, poor infrastructure, drug resistance, poor notification, and overall negligence. Eradication of poverty, undernourished education of people, elimination of stigma are the must TB-free futures. Current COVID-19 has given us an excellent opportunity to create awareness about these tuberculosis in communities at various levels. The main reasons to get the tuberculosis is consumption of alcohol and tobacco. The biggest challenges to effective the tuberculosis is toxic treatment, undefined TB cases, lack of social support, centralized drug resistance tuberculosis, and stigma. The 10 million people who become ill with the tuberculosis every year, 4 million of them do not get care and their needs. Many poor people are affected by the tuberculosis by the economic burden. The patients are increasing 25,500 to 30,000 per patient despite the free diagnosis treatment provided by the Government of India. Globally, 50% of the people suffering with the tuberculosis with the economic burden. The tuberculosis is caused by the bacterium called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The National Tuberculosis Elimination Program is earlier known as Revised Tuberculosis Control Program. The initiation treatment in the 5 initial drugs are rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, and streptomycin. It is important to take medicines because to kill the germs. The tuberculosis is a virus which is spreaded one person to another person. The dots. Directly absorbed treatment short course is also known as the dots. It is name given to the control strategy for the tuberculosis recommended by the World Health Organization. The dots. Directly absorbed treatment short course is related to the anti-tuberculosis. The ways to prevent the tuberculosis is vaccination, early diagnosis, testing, quarantine, and medicines for the tuberculosis. The telemedicines used in the artificial intelligence in the tuberculosis is patients monitoring, healthcare information technology, intelligence assistance diagnosis. Ladies and gentlemen, India has set a future strategy that is to cure and prevent this disease in the next upcoming year 2025. The World Health Organization reported to the India to 2023 to 2024 the tuberculosis in India was increased 2%. The another future strategy taken by the country India is collaborates with international organization. Mostly, India collaborates with international organization that is World Health Organization. In 2013, in the UN session, the World Health Organization reported to the world for every 1 minute, 5 to 6 members are getting this tuberculosis as the worldwide. In 2013, the tuberculosis is the biggest burden to the world. India and other 3 countries are thinking to launch new treatment for the tuberculosis. The tuberculosis is a disease which is preventable and the curable disease. India develops this treatment in the next upcoming years. This treatment takes nearly 6 months. Mr. President, although elimination of the tuberculosis is one of the sustainable development targets by the world by 2030. But India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi noticed that to 2025, this tuberculosis in India will completely cure and reduce. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of India. I have great pleasure in welcoming distinguished representative of the state of Congo.
Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, gender persists in Congo, particularly in access to traditional gender roles, often limit women's participation in decision-making process and economic activities. Gender-based violence, including sexual violence, remains a significant concern. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a home to advise area of people who have faced a range of challenges, lack of access to education, healthcare services. Congo suffers from hunger crisis. Our efforts are being made to improve gender equality. The Congo Digital Acceleration Project is a project that is aims to increase broadband internet for the undeserved population and improve governance capacity to deliver digitally enabled public services with the line of National Development Plan. Early forced marriages, parents' lack of interest on the children's activities, low value placed on schooling, children's are disinterest to go to school because of the school quality. The education policy in the Congo is 6 years for primary, followed by 6 years for secondary education. To remove gender discrimination curriculum, promote gender equality in society. The Congo gender equality is the ranks 151st out of 179 in 2021. The World Bank study generated new data on knowledge to increase learning and improve human capital by addressing the girls' education and empowerment. School-related violence in some countries. Violence can be physical, sexual, it can occur on our school grounds. The main problem of Congo is malnutrition, food insecurity. It was just over 70 years ago, the teaching method was started in this Switzerland. It was begun at the same time for men and women. The teachers are avoiding separately boys and girls with separate lines, activities, and mixing up in a classroom. The mentorship is having a mentor is a great way of men to build a professional network and develop the skills needed effectively make connections in the future. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a culture, history, economic lack of coexistence. MHM is menstrual hygiene management. The menstrual hygiene management in schools are providing adolescent girls with knowledge and sanitary products, understand and manage their menstruation. Co-curricular activities should be planned at the certain term of intervals so that there is a snap between the class and out of the class activities. 4 activities are practiced in Congo: agriculture, animal husbandry, fishing, forestry. The education problem in the Congo is over 4 million children aged 9 to 14 remains out of the school. Mr. President, the early forced marriages in Congo is because of rural area sustained levels. Child marriages at 11.6% before the age of 15 and 37.3% before the age of 18. There are 3 types of education: formal, informal and non-formal. Formal education is composed with training models that are organized or controlled by the given arrangement of laws and standards. Informal education is totally different from formal education because students are learning outside of the classes by using the TV shows and DVDs. Non-formal education. Non-formal education is totally different from formal education and informal education.
because non-credit adults programs like games are conducted in the online courses. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Congo. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the state of Oman.
I would like to start by congratulating Mr. President Charles Manley on his election of 78th session of General Assembly. And I would also like to thank the Secretary General of General Assembly, Maya Angelina. Mr. President, Oman has world's best health system. Its education system is growing robustly. Many of the science and engineering students are women. Investments in science are creating new future for Oman. And analysis and intersection of politics has been given due attention in the recent past. Ladies and gentlemen, women who have experienced gender-based violence in order to regain their security and autonomy. Mr. President, Oman may repeatedly appeal for physical mental support, police services, legal services, etc. In the Middle East countries, mostly Arab Gulf Cooperation Councils consisting of Oman, the process of participation of women in enterprises and business has been given due attention in the recent past. Fellow members, Oman is making gradual progress in the area of women's rights and duties. Women have been afforded more leadership positions in the area of women's rights. And currently there are 3 female ministers in the Omani cabinet, 12 female members in State Council, and 2 female representatives in Shura Council. The provision in the civil service law also address citizens as employees without any gender discrimination. Mr. President, moreover, Article 12 of the Basic Law provides safeguards and all citizens are equal before the law, provides the importance of gender equality in employment for public jobs. Article 17 of the Constitution of Oman, all citizens are equal before the law, and women have afforded more leadership and opportunities for advancements. Currently, there are 2 male shoot opportunities and have the elections. They have nominated themselves for Shura Council and they have the right to nominate themselves and they can also vote in all government elections. Gender mainstream is a strategy that helps government to make better decisions about gender equality. Gender mainstream can also help underpin more equitable policy outcomes for all and make sure the women have equal opportunities and for advancements, ensuring that hiring and promotions are fair. According to the knowledge economy, Oman has been bounce gap of 9% and median gender pay gap of 6%. According to the UN Women Watch. Ladies and gentlemen, women can invite international organizations and United Nations Industrial Development Organization to increase their support for training. Oman Health Vision 2050 was published by MOH in 2014. And ladies and gentlemen, the outlines their vision for future of Oman and analyzes how the intersection of politics, economics, and social technologies advances will impact healthcare system structures in the coming years. FFPS, Family Friendly Policies, aims to help employees to manage their family responsibilities and create flexible work conditions enable them to work better on both sides. Women in Oman are joining in the workforce in a large numbers. Fellow members in Oman has conducted a workshop in 2019 on on engaging men and boys. They discussed evidence-based programming on key issues related gender equality. Many leaders are committed all about to educating themselves on key issues. And since 1970, political and economic changes have brought about great improvements in the health and education of women. Mr. President, women is thinking that comprehensive sex education not only provide knowledge to make decision making, also provide gender equality in classrooms, colleges and schools. Since 1970 and after that, women has still faces the gender equality challenges in such as low representation in public office and parliament in women, women in the lack of protection from domestic violence for women, poverty and lack of opportunities for women. That's why, Mr. President, Women has established an association named Women Association, which provides societal, non-fascist, female temper of community participation, and which provides the in terms of conditions of cultural, social, and educational services to the women and child. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Oman. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency, the President of the State of Malta. I request protocol escort for Her Excellency.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. According to United Nations, women's violence against knows no social, economic or national boundaries. Worldwide, an estimated 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual abuse in her lifetime. Earlier marriages almost always forces girls has to drop out of school. Globally, 1 out of 5 girls is married before her 18th birthday. The digital transformation era is untenable, brought a wealth of benefits to business across the globe, enhancing productivity, referring data, driving insights, and decision making process, customers hosting revenue. As we continue to adapt to change, work dynamic, digital technology, economic uncertainties, we are learning valuable lessons that will shape the future of our organization. Education in Malta is comprehensively to age 16 years is offered in 2 sectors, the state and the private sector. The state is responsible for promoting the education, instructions, ensuring universal access to educate the Maltese citizens. In Malta, the healthcare system consists as a public sector. A high-income country, Malta offers a good job prospects, both high and low skilled workers across the variety of industries. Men are generally expected to be the principal providers for their family, while women expected to take care of children and households. Right Equality and Citizenship Fund Global Gender Gap Report India 2003 has been ranked 127th out of 146 countries. In last Global Gender Gap Report is released by Economic Forum. Women in leadership roles at all-time high. Women in executive leadership roles training program is a professional growth for all genders. Malta has a National Law on Gender Equality Act 2003. The law primarily covers the measures that combat the discrimination and establish the National Commission for the Promotion of Gender Equality, NCPE, the independent body for the promotion of gender equality for men and women. Education in Malta is comprehensively through age 16 years. In Malta, the healthcare system consists as public sector. Each year on 25th November, the International Day Elimination of Violence Against Women
16 Weeks of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. Gender-based violence, GBV, is presented in every society around the world, and it takes many forms as a violation of human rights in crisis, weather, conflict, natural disasters. Article 14 Constitution, the Constitution states shall promote equal rights, equal enjoyments for men and women, social, economic, cultural, civil, and political rights. Work-life balance issues are incentives that allows the employees the flexibility to manage his or her life outside of work, or work-life balance issues, practices, deliberate organizational or changes in progress or organizational cultural that are designed to reduce work-life balance issues, conflict enable employees to be more. Despite strong constitutional guarantee for gender equality, impressive legislative institutions, frameworks, as well as specialized for implementing the gender equality, we heard repeatedly that progress has been hampered by partisan structures and beliefs. The concept of gender mainstreaming was first discussed at the United Nations 1985 Third World Conference on Women. Nairobi established as their strategy in international gender equality through policies budgeting platform for action. Adopted at the 1995 United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women. If men and women have different needs than the needs of women and the needs of men. If men and women are disadvantaged in the given situation, female engineers often face a range of challenges including gender-based discrimination, lack of representation, unequal opportunities. Global commitment to gender equality, education according to the Charter of United Nations, stated purpose of United Nations, promote and encourage, respect human rights and for fundamental freedoms. They are assuming the race, sex, language, religion. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Malta. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honored to welcome His Excellency, representative of United Kingdom.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Climate change is causing global temperatures to rise. Greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide released into Earth's atmosphere in large volumes and trapping the sun's heat. This has brought 1 degree Celsius increase in the Earth's average surface temperature. Transports like cars, buses, trains, trucks, ships, planes, unless electric and charged with renewable energy, all produce emissions by burning fossil fuels. In the UK, transport is the biggest contributor of climate change and responsible for 27% of emissions in 2019, mostly cars, and from industries primarily comes from by burning fossil fuels. The UK's Met Office has projected that 2024 could be even warmer with the existing 1.5 degrees. So the UK government is taking to mitigate the impact of climate change. In 2022, total carbon dioxide emissions from the fossil fuels, including fuel used for generating electricity, were estimated at 312.7 metric tons. This was 2.4 lower than the figure of 2021, 321.4 metric tons. This was 7.4 lower than the figure of 2019's 337.6 metric tons. It is predicted that for every 1 year of global sea level rise caused by the mass loss of Antarctica ice sheets, the UK will suffer a rise of 1.1 meters. Fellow members, better public transport, reducing emissions from petrol and diesel engines, moving towards alternative technologies such as electrical vehicles. The UK's target under the Paris Agreement, which is expected to cut emissions by 2030 up to 68%. In 2020, 42% of electricity was generated from renewable energy. Mix has grown from less than 20% in 2010 to over 50% in 2020, February, May, October, November, and December. Extreme of heat and cold associated with climate change increases the mortality rate of vulnerable groups. The climate crisis will amplify the UK's existing health inequalities. The impact of changing climate on health is proportionately negative. In 2019, the UK government became the first major economy to pass the domestic requirement for net zero greenhouse gas emissions. In 2022 February, according to a survey conducted in United Kingdom, some of 84 respondents were fairly concerned about the climate change. In that, 63% are worried about climate change and 1% think that climate change will not impact their area. Around 120 billion euros are invested in renewable energy since 2010 and are further expecting to attract 100 billion euros for the net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050, powering up Britain and supporting up to 480,000 jobs. The CPF is designed to provide an incentive to invest in low carbon power, providing a greater support and certainty to the carbon pricing in the UK's electricity generation sector. The Environmental Act allows the UK government for better environmental protection into law. It provides the government to set new binding targets including air quality, water biodiversity and waste reduction. The UK actively participates in international agreements like the Paris Agreement and support on global climate efforts. The UK has set up the ICF, International Climate Fund, to help developing countries and tackle on climate change. The UK had a robust infrastructure system. The UK had the ideal combination of to move both goods and people around the country in a simple and affordable way. Major plans are to speed up connections and rapidly increase the capacity on the electricity grid have been set out alongside of 960 million euros are invested in green industries. The UK government committed to achieving fully decarbonized electricity by 2035, subject to security of supply. This act focuses on the British energy security strategy and the North Sea transition deal. Mitigating the impact on developing nations, the UK government had spent 1.79 billion euros in the official development assistance in 2022. The environmental and conservation planning typically include government representatives, stakeholders, business, scientists, landowners, and local users of natural resources. Saving 196 terawatts equivalent to 22 power stations through socially cost effective. This is 11% lower than the business as usual baseline. Mr. President, the 8,000 Rising campaigns is a cultural relation response to the challenges of climate change. Youth are taking action about climate change, mitigation and adoption. Their impacts extends and shaping policies. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of United Kingdom. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the state of France.
Thank you, Mr. President, General Secretary of United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the temperature in France last year was 2.9 degrees Celsius as compared to 1991 and 2020 averagely. As well as seeing the hottest year on the record, the rainfall was also 25% lower as compared to the 1991 and 2020 averagely. This led to reduce in hydroelectric power production, a drop in cropping, effects on biodiversity, and access need related to mobility. The global greenhouse gas emission in France has been increased almost 6% in 2021, which is equivalent to 423 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Between 1990 and 2021, the greenhouse gas emission in France fell by 23%. The country has set the target of reducing 50% by 2030 as compared to the levels of 1990. From the surface to the deepest depths of the ocean, oceans are getting warmer. The ocean temperature combined with the melting of ice and causing the average sea level to rise. With more than 5,800 kilometers of coastal line around the main lands of the France, which must be added almost 1,200 kilometers of coastal line, the overseas department, France, where 1.5 million people lived in coastal area, were potentially exposed. To address climate emergency, France committed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. It plans to significantly increase the contributions of renewable energy in its energy mix. 4 barriers to international cooperation are identified: the nature of climate change, the scientific evidence of anthropogenic climate change, uncertainty about the net benefits of climate change policy, and disagreement over sharing the burden of climate change policy. The awareness within the France population have been increased rapidly over the past years. Today, 85% of French citizens can express the concern about climate change. This growing concern can be done by many data, statistics, studies, etc. Current National Climate Plan for 190 parties to Paris Agreement taken together would lead to sizable increase of almost 9% in global greenhouse gases emission by 2030. To keep the global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius as called for in the Paris Agreement need to be reduced almost 45% by 2023 and reaches net zero by 2050. Demands and response is a deliberate process that allows the energy users to reduce the usage of electricity at peak demand by passing the consumption. Actions taken to achieve 2020 biodiversity targets. Today, 12.5 metropolitan territories are protected in the abundance with Nature 200 network. 40% of terrestrial water and 5% of EEZ are also under protection. The healthcare system in France and USA are different. However, since the breakout of global pandemic situation in both countries, and the two countries have been facing the common challenges. French government opened its energy and climate roadmap to public consultation in an effort to move away from fossil fuels and reducing the share in the final consumption to 42% in 2030 and 29% in 2035. February 1960 marked in martyrs by Cyclone Colonel when partially all the houses and all the buildings in martyrs were severely damaged. As a result, gradually all the houses in the martyrs began to look towards the colonial version. In a green industry tax presented to 16th May, the French government laid out its plan to support a reindustrialization of France by favoring environmental friendly companies and the development of five selected sectors. France committed to mobilize an average of 5 billion for the climate action in developing countries in 2020, including 1.5 billion for the adaptation. According to the Climate Activity Report and Biodiversity Activity Report in 2018, France mobilizing an average of 5.08 billion for the climate finance in developing countries in 2019. The development of France national law carbon strategy is a good practice because a large number of stockholders are involved in this process. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of France. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I am honored to welcome His Excellency, Representative of Sweden.
Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. Since the end of the 19th century, the average annual temperature is increased by almost 2 degrees Celsius, which is compared to the global warming. The winter temperature is predicted to be further. It decreases as much as 7 degrees centigrade and 13 degrees Fahrenheit by the worst case of scenario. The northern parts of the country have a subterranean climate change. Sweden emission from the entire Swedish economy is decreased 3% compared to 2021 to 2020, amounting 49 tons carbon dioxide equivalents. For the last 93, sea level staying important to the ongoing climate change. The sea to rise approximately 15 centimeters on an average. Sweden increased uptake of CO2 by forests and additional measures verified emission reduction carried outside the borders. Sweden was the first country that initiated a carbon tax for carbon-intensive fuels like oil and natural gas. Biden put under significant pressure the last 70 years industrialization and overconsumption. It covers 67.7% country ecosystems and it covers 30% of the healthlands. The Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency is Sweden. For the International Development Cooperation, President is Johan Persson and the capital is the Stockholm. Gaining public awareness is necessary policy to combat change is crucial for challenges. Mainly, it funded the universal for all the citizens. It emphasized the urgency of climate action by 2045 by 3% of the 2045 since the period occurred in the 1990. As of 2017, the Swedish government climate and environment investment budget was about 1.3 billion euros of non-fossil fuel travel. 2017, 1.4 billion, 2018, 1.5 billion euros, 2019, 4.5 billion euros, and finally 2020, 5 billion euros. Sweden has established a carbon pricing mechanism to achieve a carbon reduction. It focuses on protecting the climate tech market of the conservation efforts and reforestation. By 2045, Sweden is have the net emission of greenhouse gases and entered into atmosphere after achieving negative emissions. The reform is a key component of climate tech market, urbanizing food for planes. People were coast in winter and short-lived in summer. Adaptation assets strengthen infrastructure fuels. It plans on future planning for urbanizing food for planes, demand for water, and facilitates of houses. Sweden ranked as the third largest climate tech market of funding, 224.4% country. It aims to provide the invest research and innovation for the sustainable practices of the greenhouse. And the developing nations of the country have a substantial climate change, and it is the responsible for specific initiatives or the financial aid to developing the Sweden efforts. Strategies involved in various sectors like academia, business, and the civil society of the climate action. Sweden recognizes the youth involvement in specific initiatives or the financial aid to develop the climate policy making. It develops the new culture of the Sweden formed by the president of the Johan Forsell, his session of the 2015. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Sweden. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, the President of the State of Ukraine. I request protocol escort for His Excellency.
Secretary General of the United Nations, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. The Russian President signs on the Treaty of Annexation with criminal leaders in Moscow on 18 March 2014. The Russia in September annexed the Donetsk People Republic and Luhansk People Republic and began integrating paramilitaries into its armed forces, and they designed as a terrorist group by the government of Ukraine. The Ukraine has long played an important, yet sometimes overlooked on the global security order. Today, the country is on the front lines of renewed great power rivalry. During the second summit in October 1998 in Vienna, the EU and Ukraine relations were defined as a strategic and economic partnership. Ukraine first declared that the decision to acquire associate membership in the EU. The NATO alliance consists of 30 member states from North America and Europe. Article 5 of the treaty states that if an armed attack occurs on any one of the member states, it should be considered an attack on all of the member states. In September 2022, the Defense Ministry of Russia confirmed that 5,937 Russian soldiers had been killed in the war, and also claims 61,207 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed, and 14,368 were wounded in the war. Fighting in the airstrip for inflicted nearly 22,000 civilian casualties, while 5.1 million people are internally displaced, and 6.1 million people are fighting friends, and 7.6 million people are need humanitarian assistance armed conflict in the eastern Ukraine. An ongoing refugee crisis began in Europe in late February 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Nearly 6 million refugees left Ukraine are reported across Europe, while an estimated 8 million others had been displaced from the country by late May 2022. The Ukraine's economic output is at its fractional pre-war levels. In the first years, the country lost 30% of GDP. Its GDP is projected to grow in 2023 if only by 0.5%. The Russian president involved in dual view, including the refusal to see Ukraine as an intimate state, has been also identified as a contributing factor. It was unable to achieve despite annexing Crimea in 2014 and sparking a conflict in the east of Ukraine. Its intention was to capture Kyiv and overthrow the Ukrainian government and take full control over the entire country. Ladies and gentlemen, today Moscow is pursuing diplomatic initiatives in order to shift the international context of the war in their favor. For the next 10 years, more than 14,000 people would be killed in fighting in the eastern Ukraine. The Ukraine come up with savings called for UN charter system and to deter Russia from the further aggression, including and excluding the Russia UN Security Council. Russia annexed Crimea and the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk are the primary areas of four southeast Ukrainian oblasts in 2014 to 2022. Respectively, the Russian occupation of about 18% of Ukrainian territory. As of February 2023, the military aid was donated by the EU institutions, 40,000 countries, companies, and other parties. The United States alone has pledged for the $400 billion humanitarian aid to Ukraine since the Russia's massive invasion in February 2022. The United Nations offered for the coordination of humanitarian affairs and appealed for the $4.2 billion humanitarian aid to Ukraine in 2024. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Ukraine. I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of Russia.
Mr. President and Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Speakers, the idea that our shared planet is experiencing irreversible changes was mentioned right in front of our eyes. There is a new world order being born, our future is being shaped by a struggle between the global majority in favor of a fairer distribution of global benefits and seamless diversity, and between the few who will bear colonial methods of subjugation in order to maintain their domination, which is slipping through their hands. The collective as a calling card, and it has long been to reject the principle of equality. And the total inability to reach agreement being used to looking down at the rest of the world. All Americans and Europeans make all sorts of promises, and they take on commitment into alia, written ones and legally binding ones, then they just don't fulfill them. As President Putin pointed out, the West is one of that and truly unfair. Russia, like many countries, knows about this firsthand in 1945. We, along with Washington and London, together were vanquishing the enemy in the Second World War. Our allies in the under Hitler coalition were already making plans for unthinkable military operations. That's what it was called against Soviet Union. 4 years later, in 1949, the Americans drafted a dropshot operation to make mass nuclear strikes on the USSR. These ghastly senseless ideas did remain on paper. The USSR created its own weaponized retaliation, and it took the Cuban crisis of 1962. When the world was on the brink of nuclear war, for the idea of displaying it and the illusion victory stopped. Being the basis of military planning strategy of the US at the end of this World War, the Soviet Union plays a decisive role in reuniting Germany and agreed upon parameters for the new security architect in Europe. The Soviet Union and Russian leadership was given concrete political assurances regarding the non-expansion of NATO military. Aliens to the relevant records of these negotiations are both in our and Western archives, and they are in open access. With these assurances by Western leaders were just deception, they in no way intended to uphold them. Further, they were never bothered by the fact that by expanding NATO towards Russia's borders, they violated official commitments not to strengthen their own security to the detriment of the security of others, and not to permit a military political domination in Europe. Group of countries or organizations in 2021. All proposals to conclude the treaties rather on mutual security guarantees in Europe were only rejected without any change to the status of Ukraine. Being outside the alliance, the West continued its ongoing militarization of prosopopicity of regime that was brought to power as a result of bloody coup, and started to use this to wage a hybrid war against our country, something that has been unprecedented since the end of this Cold War. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Russia. I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of Germany.
The Secretary General of United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. The international community cannot stand by as a major power uses violence to expand its borders. calling on member states to uphold its purposes and principles of the organization. There is no justification for whatsoever with Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. President Putin is waging this war with only one single objective: to seize the Ukraine. Political independence and self-determination do not count for him, and there is only one word for this. This is imperialism, plain and simple. The return of imperialism is not only disaster for Europe, but it is disaster for our global peaceful order. If we want to end this war, then we cannot be indifferent to how it ends. Putin only give up in his war and his imperialist ambitions if he realizes that he cannot win. This is why we will not accept any peace dictated by Russia. And this is why we will not accept any pretentious referenda. And this is why Ukraine must be able to defend itself against Russia's invasion. The world is witnessing new fragmentation, the emergence of new war and conflict, and the rise of major global crises. Some have seen this as harbinger of world without rules. Our problem is not the absence of rules, but our problem is lack of willingness to abide by them and to enforce them. The alternative to a rule-based world is not anarchy, but the dominance of strong over the weak, stressing that the international community cannot be indifferent to whether the rule of power or power of rule wins the day. The international order does not happen by itself. If we do nothing, then the charter is just a piece of paper holding up a founding document of United Nations. The charter calls all of us to uphold its purposes and principles. We stand for international order. The world must not stand idly when a major nuclear power is armed to the teeth, a founding member of the United Nations and the permanent charter member of United Nations Security Council, no less seeks to the shift of borders through the use of violence. The war in Ukraine is leading to rising prices, energy scarcity and famine. The Germany is also supporting Ukraine with the export of food and will also support for rebuilding of the country. On this regard, on 25th October in Berlin, an international conference of rebuilding takes place. Our message is this: we stand firmly on the side of those who are under the attack for the protection of lives, for the freedom of Ukrainians, and for the protection of international order. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Germany. The General Assembly will resume its consideration on Agenda Item 5 entitled Illegal Israel Actions on Occupied East Jerusalem and the rest of them occupied Palestinian territory in the light of the decision taken by the General Assembly earlier. Today, to suspend the debate on Agenda Item, the Assembly shall now proceed to consider a draft resolution ES10-L25. Will now proceed to the Assembly. Will now proceed to consider a draft resolution ES10-L21. Delegation wishing to make a statement of vote of the proposals under this item, including the proposed amendment. I invite you to do so the intervention before giving the floor for explanation. Before the vote, may remind delegates that the explanations of vote are limited for 10 minutes. Now, I give the floor for the distinguished representative of the State of Canada.
Mr. President and Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates and fellow members. We meet here today to take action and to show the people of Gaza and the people of Israel that was in their plight, the devastation they are facing, the needs to find ways to get more urgent help to them. Given the gravity of their despite any life lost is a tragedy. There is no hierarchy of death here. The critical reasons for who we get here is already being forgotten by so many if it is never happened. But Hamas raised killed over 1,400 Israelis, not even mentioned in the comments by my friend from Jordan. With their own hands and weapons and war shift terror on the people of Israel, the ongoing threat of Hamas Iran, it proxied Hezbollah and other continues to hang the entry of prisons since the day October 7, over 7,000 Pakistanis. Just few days ago, when I spoke to the Security Council, it was over 5,000. We can see the need for a rapid response from these organizations to deal with the humanitarian crisis. Those who have been living under Hamas terror have been killed and over a million are displaced. This is what has promoted these bodies. These emergency special section into action, we announce the considerable efforts deployed by the drafters to take account the comments and were grateful for those efforts which considerably made it possible. We unfortunately cannot act as General Assembly of United Nations without acknowledging the terrible events of the 7th of October and without condemning the terrorists who are responsible for these and that. While Canada is participating as an amendment to the resolution provided here with a view to condemning the terrorist attacks carried out by Hamas on the 7th of October and the hostages taking which continues if our amendment is not adopted, not only will the Security Council not only they have acted following these violence, but this organ will adopt a resolution which does not even mention anywhere the organization that may be responsible for one of the worst terrorist attacks in history. And we will all have to live with the failure while the tragedy continues to unfold. The purpose of this amendment is quite straightforward. It is not been any whitewash of bodies. Facts or facts. On October 7, Hamas committed act of killing, kidnapping man and children. We in this assembly have an obligation to name two things not mentioned in the drafters resolution, the organization that may be responsible for one of those events and the consequence and the deliberates of the murders and the hostages taken that stolen underways. Our amendment is just no more and no loss. The actions of a terrorist organization are not to be confused, while the Palestinian peoples nothing and no one can justify that Hamas has unleashed. We continuously call for immediate release of hostages and demands that all civilians be treated with compassion and human forgiving membership have nations. Being hope the bodies unnamed and all ongoing war has crimes have to be brought to the end. We all understand in this chamber that war has roots. We share a common obligation to protect civilians, to respect international humanitarian laws, ensure that earth workers are in safeguard in all circumstances. Civilians in Gaza, including of United Nations itself, and tragically unacceptably high and required to deal with the rapid deteriorating humanitarian solutions. It is our hope that neighboring countries are not to be confused, brought deeper into the conflict. To be clear, Mr. President, Canada supports the right of Israel and Palestine to live side by side in peace, and key steps must be taken to ensure that earth workers and this path. These terrorist attacks, after we have had the courage to name it and ending the power of terrorist organization to the resolution and names what we name it, what we are processing. If our amendment is not adopted, it will allow many member states to support the text as a whole, including Canada. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Canada. I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today with a profound sense of duty as I present draft resolution L25, target protection of civilians and upholding legal and humanitarian obligations on behalf of the Arab group. This resolution is brought forward under the 10th Emergency Special Session Agenda, Item 5, addressing illegal Israel actions in occupied East Jerusalem and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory. It has granted co-sponsorship from 47 member states of this estimated General Assembly. Mr. President, the situation in Gaza is characterized by immeasurable suffering where the fundamental human rights and the dignity of its people have been violated in blatant disregard of international law, the consequence of indiscriminate violence, the loss of countless innocent lives, and the extensive destruction of civil infrastructure are designed to leave a lasting mark on generations to come. Since the outbreak of this cycle of violence, conflict on 7th October, over 7,000 innocent Palestinians have tragically lost their lives, including women, children, elderly health workers, and unstaffed. The urgent need for an immediate case file to end this prolonged tragedy and create a path towards diplomatic solutions cannot be overstated. It is not merely our responsibility, but a profound moral obligation to champion the cause of peace of like these comprehensive circumstances. As we all are witnessing a ground invention connected by Israel as we speak in the absence of a resolute action by the United Nations Security Council 4 times. So far, our draft resolution pursues a simple individual goal, one that aligns with the purpose for which the United Nations was established a peace and compliance with international law. This resolution addresses the intensifying violence in Gaza Strip, the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. It calls for an immediate, enduring, and unwavering humanitarian truth, ultimately leading to a cessation of hostilities. It demands adherence to international law, especially concerning the safe protection of civilians and upholding legal and humanitarian obligations on behalf of the Arab group. Moreover, it begs for the immediate unconditioned releases of captive and discourse of imperative of protection, civilians and humanitarian infrastructure, and the disproportionate impact of armed conflict on vulnerable groups encompassing women, children, elderly health, workers and unstaffed. Furthermore, this resolution underscores that the valuable path forward to state solutions rooted in coordinate and resolution and international law. In a time of crisis, uncertainty, this path offers hope for just and lasting peace. Finally, I would like to remind delegations that Israel is responsible for the atrocities that are being committed now and that will be committed in the ground invention of Gaza. Do not support any effort to legitimize such atrocities. As we all have seen, now in a proposal to penetrate, whitewash such unlawful, horrendous aggression against the Palestinians. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished delegate of Jordan. Now we shall proceed to take a decision on draft resolution ES10/L25. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution ES10/L25 entitled Protection of Civilians and Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligations. A recorded vote has been requested. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of draft resolution ES10/L25, please signify. Those against and abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on the draft resolution ES10/L25 entitled Protection of Civilians and Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligations. We all delegations, before I log the mission, we all delegation confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen. The voting has been completed. Please log the mission.
The result of vote is as follows. In favor 120, against 14, abstentions 45. A draft resolution ES10/L25 is adopted. We other members is now in unmoderated caucus.
Can all of you return to the floor to the distinguished representative of Iceland.
Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, and fellow members, we are convening this emergency special session against the backdrop of another great strategy for millions of Israelis and Palestinians and other supporting impasses in the Security Council. Iceland supported the amendment proposed by Canada, which would have added a much needed context and balance to the resolution. And solely on the humanitarian front. It's unfortunate that consensus could not be reached on a solution to address the grave humanitarian situation and the need for the concrete action to protect civilians and to facilitate the safe delivery of humanitarian assistance. Mr. President, Iceland launched the call for humanitarian force to facilitate the safe delivery of humanitarian aid. Throughout Gaza, safe and unimpeded humanitarian access must be ensured. Civilians and civil objects, medical personnel, and humanitarian workers and assets must be protected. We explore the immense suffering of innocent civilians and the thousands, including women, children, and personnel, they have been killed. We are alarmed by the impact of mass evacuation in civilians in Gaza. We must prevent the further escalation for the sake of Israelis and Palestinians and wider region across the world. This continues, the violence is fanning the flames of hate, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism. Mr. President, Iceland is grateful to the UN Secretary General for his tireless efforts to ensure the urgent delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance, so desperately in need of food, water, shelter, and medical care. We welcome the opening of Rafah crossing and we commended the humanitarian workers work night and day to facilitate the safe delivery of humanitarian assistance. More aid is needed. It is needed now. Time is running out. Iceland has responded to the UN emergency appeals with an additional contribution to honor our long-standing partner and led the UN agency mandated with supporting Palestinian refugees. We argue all the donors step up their unrest critical frontline delivery of humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. To conclude, the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate and the need for the humanitarian assistance is critical. Iceland will continue to do its part under these dire circumstances. Mr. President, we must break out of this vicious cycle of violence and work towards a sustainable political solution. The international parameters for a long-term solution to the conflict are a clear two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security and mutual recognition even in the mid-crisis. We must not give in to peace and security, and we must not lose hope even when the peace seems unrealistic and distant. We must put the peace process back on track. Otherwise, we run the risk of perpetuating the cycle of violence and humanitarian conditions deteriorating determinant of everyone. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished delegate of Iceland. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honor to welcome Her Excellency the Representative of Pakistan.
Secretary General of United Nations, and ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, the text that has been proposed by the Arab and the Islamic countries in I-25 is a humanitarian text. It seeks three simple things. One, an immediate cessation of the hostility, a case file. Secondly, provision of urgent humanitarian relief to the besieged people of Gaza. And third, a stipulation against further displacement of 2 million people in Gaza, trapped between Israel's bombs and its tanks. Mr. President, the co-sponsors of the L-25 have been circumscribed in the language that has been used in the document L-25. The document has not condemned Israel by the name. This has been a deliberate act of moderation on the part of the sponsors, because if one were to see the situation that is on the ground with Israeli bombs, it is Palestinians with men, women and small children. Half of them children are killed by Israelis. Half of them children were killed by Israelis. Displays the enormity of Hamas that is so great and enormous that when my friend from Canada insists on naming the organization Hamas, that he does not feel the need for the equity, balance and fairness, which Canada is so well known, but he does not feel need to the name Israel for killing Palestinians and injuring 1.1 million Palestinians. Hamas balance, he says, what need to be named has to be named. We believe Israel need to be named if you are fair, if you are equitable, if you are just blame one side, not other. If you were to go back the issue of who started this, we all know that who started this. It is a 50 years of Israeli occupation, murdering and killing the Palestinians with impunity. that this was started when you push a people into the corner, they will respond. The Secretary General said they did not be in the vacuum. They can't face the truth, they can't face the justice, they can't face the crime that originated by the Hamas. We are deeply conquered and their humanitarian dictating with Gaza due to the humanitarian stiff. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished representative of Pakistan. I have great pleasure in welcoming the President of the State of Netherlands.
I thank you for permitting this emergency special section for recognizing that these are the extraordinarily trying times, Mr. President. We are shocked by the number of innocent lives lost, and every civilian life is valuable. Each civilian life is one too many with our thoughts. The victims of Israel and Palestinians and their families, none of us can even imagine the scale of humanitarian challenge in Gaza. And they need humanitarian peace in fighting and urgently needed to make this possible and to save lives unfortunately. Is needed also and humanitarian we have response 27 and million euros for UNRWA, which is coming from UNRWA annual contribution 119 million euros. Mr. President, we would also like to pay a tribute to UN staff and humanitarian workers that lost their lives while doing. So we all need to work together. This conflict spreading and even further. We call by all the parties. This is a not too time to put fuel on the fire. We were also worried the situations in the occupied of West Bank, where settler violence is aggravating in tense situations. The Palestinian Authority to maintain stability and the services are full support. Mr. President, we are grateful to Jordan for the efforts to introduce a resolution that gives new voice to many of the grave counselors shared by us. All we welcome the strong condemnation acts of the violence against the Palestine and Israel civilians. The call for immediately humanitarian peace and all the humanitarians with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. This message have our full support and strong. Still, we have decided that option on the solution because important elements are in our view first missing by following terrorist attack by Hamas. We support to Israelites to define itself. Mr. President, we must be break the cycle of violence in peace and two-state solutions. We all know that a prescriptive and sustainable peace and security for Israel and Palestinians alike is the only way to forward. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Netherlands. The Assembly will hear and addresses by His Excellency State of Belgium. I request protocol as called for His Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, Belgium voted for this resolution, but we deeply regret that certain elements that we had promoted and which are fundamental were not included in the final text. The reasons why we voted in favor are nevertheless numerous. One, humanitarian access in Gaza must be guaranteed and all types of obstacles must be eliminated. Belgium, like the rest of the European Union, supports the establishment of humanitarian corridors and pauses hoping that this could lead to humanitarian ceasefires in response to the calls from United Nations. This is the primary reason for our vote. Secondly, our international action is, as you know, based on respect for international law and international humanitarian law. In this particular issue, which is particularly complex, emotional as in others, as the Secretary General rightly stated, even wars have rules. We have, therefore, expressed our support to the general goals while being well aware of what is lacking the protection of civilians. All civilians must be our primary concern and they must be targeted with increased efforts on our part. Even if they remain the primary responsibility of the parties to the conflict, here I wish to recall that Belgium does not urge the attempt for a total blockade, nor forced displacement, nor the use of civilians as human shield. Whether it be in this context or in any other court claim or area, nevertheless, that this resolution that we consider to be primarily humanitarian in nature did not take into account the following elements: a clear condemnation of the terrorist attack perpetrated in Israel by Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorism must be caught in all circumstances. The acts could not pass in silence. They should have been condemned explicitly in the Security Council. Since this was not possible, the current resolution could have denounced them to a greater extent. It will be the focus of the peace day effort, which has the full support of my country, Belgium. Diplomatic efforts must currently focus on de-escalating the tensions so as to avoid further human suffering. Belgium commends and supports all the efforts undertaken to avoid further exacerbation in the situation in the region. And this is where the Foreign Minister of Belgium is currently in the Middle East and is multiplying his contacts in the region. We are bringing a message of dialogue which must move through truth, peace, and respect for international law. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished delegate of Belgium. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President and Secretary General of the United Nations, and ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, multilateralism has always been the foundation of the Poland activities at the United Nations, and our actions have been guided by the principles contained in a Charter of the United Nations. Therefore, we are fully supported for all international efforts aimed at restoring a peace of Poland efforts. Poland falling with a great concern devastating crisis in the Middle East. We know very well the consequences of the war, invasion, terror, which are felt for the generation. Now it is a critical time we should make every effort to reach the cessation of the hostilities and regain a diplomatic path of this dispute. Situation of the civilians in the Gaza continues a deterrent of food, water, medicine. Israel continues airstrikes and prepares a ground assault, and Hamas continues a rocket fire on Israel. In the Poland, surprising with the election result, record-breaking turnout. To put to stop a suffering people because of the big pain, we are falling situation today, especially the fact of women and children who are suffering. This is a dramatic situation, and this has to end as soon as possible. We don't have any doubt about that. This direction and international community should act. On October 7, an explosive conflict broke down between the Israel and Hamas following an unexpected attack initiated by the militants of the Gaza Strip. Hamas members working security barriers in southern Israel and actions simultaneously paired with the volley rocket fire. Mr. President, Poland decided to abstain on resolution as we believe that path of peace requires include several key elements. Missing the text for submitted proposal lacks clear condemnation of the Hamas attack on October 7. This year, terrorism aimed at the civilian population cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. Why this Poland condemned as a brutal attack on civilians? Just one second should state it clearly. Israel is the stuttered state. It have right to defend itself. Citizens with the comp of international law, international humanitarian law. So lastly, we are also joining for all calling immediately unconditional releases and hostages taken by the Hamas among them. One, we should make every effort to reach the cessation of the hostilities and return the diplomatic path of this dispute. We are fully believe that within the international community should be able to develop a common position that extremely it is an important issue. Otherwise, the escalation spreading a conflict may devastating in the long-lasting consequences that can remains the construct of cooperation negotiated two-state solution built upon internationally agreed parameters. And I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Poland. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honored to welcome Her Excellency Representative of France.
Mr. President and Secretary General of the United Nations and all ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, France voted in favor of the resolution presented by Jordan on behalf of the group because nothing to justify. The suffering of civilians, all of the victims warrant our compassion and all. Of the lives are equally worthwhile. There is no hierarchy. We have to work collectively to set up humanitarian tools which will lead eventually to a ceasefire because situation in Gaza is catastrophic. We must guarantee safe, rapid and unhindered humanitarian access, but also lasting the Gaza Strip. And that's why President Emmanuel Macron announced in April to form a humanitarian coalition for the Gaza. And France sent a new aircraft carried by humanitarian aid for the population of Gaza. France not less reiterated that the many essential elements are missing in the text. First of all, a condemnation of the terrorist attack carried out by Hamas, as well as remaining terrorist groups against Israel. Our assembly must also call release for hostages that the many countries have been already here, victims of the kind of blind. Terrorism, France is among them, and I want to also recall that Hamas does not represent of all its population, and quite opposite is catastrophic. For the aspiration of Palestine, a state that was survived, Israel has a right to defend itself and duty to do so. It respects the international law and particularly respecting the international humanitarian law. Therefore, to protect the civilians' population, France underscored of the adoption of this text and can't replace the efforts of the Security Council and brought to Israel for security, a state for Palestine that only available in two-state solution. And that's why France voted in favor of the draft resolution presented by Brazil and by the United States at the Security Council. And that's why it hopes that Security Council will reach as soon as possible and just decision which is based on our common principles. Thank you, Mr. President.
Representative of France. I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of Peru.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. Peru voted in the favor of the draft resolution presented by Jordan and also for the amendment presented by Canada. Unfortunately rejected, we were not able to achieve within the Security Council the necessary consequence to offer a solution to a conflict which increasingly claims more and more human lives. It is therefore up to the General Assembly to have the responsibilities of directing recommendations for adoption of collective measures within the frameworks of this resolution approved peace union. The text that we adopted contains fundamental and all necessary elements for an immediate truce, which would lead to a cessation of hostilities, the release of hostages, and the protection of the population under peace, for a just and lasting solution, which would allow both states, Palestine and Israel, to live in peace within secure borders, mutually agreed and internationally recognized with international law and relevant United Nations resolution. Mr. President, I must reframe that Peru categorically condemns any terrorist acts, those perpetrated by Hamas against Israel on 7th of October. At the same time, Peru considers that it is a moral and legal imperative to respect international law, in particular international humanitarian law, in order to guarantee the protection of the civilians everywhere without destruction based on crowd or nationality. And this position of principle is one of that hand that will continue to guide our actions within the United Nations. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Peru. The Assembly will hear and address us by Her Excellency, the President of the State of Israel. I request protocol as called for Her Excellency.
Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, and member states of United Nations. Mr. President, today is the day that will go down in family. We have all witnessed
witness that the United Nations no longer holds even 1 ounce legitimacy or relevance. This organization was founded in the wake of Holocaust for the purpose of preventing atrocities. At the spectacle, we just saw proved beyond a doubt that the United Nations committed, sadly, tragically, not to prevention but ensuring further atrocities. Israel just endured the largest massacres of Jews since the Holocaust, and according to a majority of so-called family of nations, Israel has no right to defend itself. Entire families and communities, they have been exterminated by the genocidal Hamas jihadists whose sole goal is to annihilate. Jews state there is no reasoning even like this. There are no talks and discussions to be held. We saw exactly what they dreamed, doing to every Israeli and Jews. We will not sit idly by to let them rearm, commit such atrocities again. We want this as every single member state in this room. Wouldn't Israel has a right to defend itself, and the realization of this right is to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. The only way to ensure this is eradication of Hamas. Terror capabilities, the only way this resolution does not even name Hamas, as if this war started on its own, not even once. It is a duty of this body to call out the murderous terrorists by name, not hide behind empty words. Why are you defending murders? Why are you defending terrorists? Deliberately beheaded children, adopted babies. What is going on here? This must may ask each of you yourselves, what is the true aim was? When this resolution was submitted, was it to bring a solution or was it to tie Israel's hands from defending itself? Distinguished representatives, Israel's goal is to eradicate Hamas terror capabilities for the sole purpose of preventing future atrocities. And the only way to destroy Hamas is to root them out of their tunnels and the subterranean city of terror Hamas has embedded deep within and under the Gazan civilian population. Just today, Israel intelligence unequivocally proving that Hamas' main operating base is located inside and underneath of Shifa Hospital in Gaza. Home to thousands of patients, medical staff, the people of Gaza are being exploited as a human shields for terrorists. While not holding the accountable 17 years of Hamas indiscriminate rocket fire on our civilians from within populated areas is not enough for you to comprehend this. At this dangerous resolution demands Israel to call for Gaza to return to this active war zone. This ridiculous resolution has the audacity to call for a truth. The goal of this resolution, truth is that Israel should cease to defend itself to Hamas, so Hamas can light us on fire. The drafters of this terrible resolution have shown that according to them, the most reliable sources for accurate information is an ISIS-like terror group. Israel is closely monitoring the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And we all know that there is no humanitarian crisis in accordance with international humanitarian law. Trusting reports coming out of Gaza is exactly like trusting reports coming from ISIS. Does the international community trust information provided by ISIS? Does he trust numbers provided by Wuhan? Of course not. So why isn't Hamas a serious terror group no different than ISIS or bomb prestige? How can you choose to believe such distortions? Every single Gazan ministry is run by Hamas. It is all a friend for Hamas. Every single official statistic is a word of genocidal terrorists. For example, the fact that the United Nations officials are still parting with Hamas lies about what happened at your hospital is a true disgrace and proven with absolute certainty that it was a Palestine Islamic Jihad rocket that hit the hospital parking lot. The number of casualties is far lower than Hamas reports, yet you continue to echo these lies. Shame on you. The truth holds zero importance in this body zero. Today, the majority of international community have shown that it prefers to support the defense of Nazi terrorists rather than law-abiding states of Israel to defend its citizens. Anyone who truly interested in preventing violence, they should not be voted for this resolution, protect the terrorists. And whoever truly wants to prevent more violence, they should be calling on Hamas to lay down their arms, turn themselves in and return all hostages if were happened in the war. The war would end immediately. This is the dark day of United Nations for mankind. Mr. President, we'll continue to defend our future, our very existence by reading the words Hamas, even so that it can never threaten anyone else. Israel will use every means at our disposal to accomplish these missions. Israel will do what must be done to eradicate Hamas terror capabilities and bring all hostages home, and will bring them home. Thank you, Mr. President.
The distinguished delegate of Israel. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honored to welcome His Excellency Representative of Australia.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. First, Australia expressed for Jordan leadership and sincere effort in bringing forward Resolution L25. We agree with the central proposition that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire and human suffering is widespread, and especially Australia again calls for humanitarian pause in hostages so that food, water, medicine and other essential assistance can reach people in distressing needs, so that citizens can get to safety. However, we obtained disappointment because we believe the resolution, as the draft was incomplete resolution and did not recognize the terrorist group Hamas as the 7th October attack. And Australia again calls for immediate and unconditional release of hostages. Moreover, the United Nations Charter guarantees national sovereignty. We believe the General Assembly can affirm Israel's right to exist without declaring long-standing and legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people, including to statehood aspirations, which Australia supports. We can affirm Israel's right to defend itself, while also saying if it does so matter, it's matter for Israel's ongoing security, which could face grave threats. It's matter for innocent civilians who should not pay for honor perpetrated by Hamas. If conflict could to still forward across the region's aspirations for peace and security for Israel, and Palestine will receive even further if today's generations and motivated by gift and resentment resulting from this crisis. This Assembly of Nations has no lesser to seek to solve the insoluble and transform disputes into hope, and despite disagreement on this resolution effort, behind the scene makes clear that most member states are acting in good faith and want to chart out of this crisis towards a political process. That political process in just and enduring peace in the form of two-state solution where Israel and Palestine. It's required all states to respect the right of others to exist, and it's required leadership under understanding and courage. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Australia. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. Norway voted in favor of the resolution just adopted. We commend our group for its efforts to act in good faith and search for a compromise. On some of the most sensitive issues that we would like to highlight two important elements that we wanted to include in resolution. First, Norway voted in favor of the amendment proposal introduced by Canada. We regret that the amendment was not adopted as a part of resolution solution. Norway has unequivocally and strongly condemned the terror attacks by Hamas in Israel on 7th October. We have also condemned the taking of hostages, and we demand their immediate and unconditional releases. Second, we would like to reiterate that Israel has a right of self-defense itself against every attacks by Hamas. We emphasize in this regarding that self-defense measures must be necessary and proportionate to despite these shortcomings. Norway decided to vote in favor of the resolution in its enters. The decision has been made in light of gravity regarding the humanitarian catastrophe. As well as we saw Gaza evolving the importance of advancing a message at a critical juncture. The situation in Gaza is already bad and getting worse by the hour. It is vital to provide the assistance to the civilian population and ensure that food, medicine, water, and other essential supplies can be delivered quickly. We are working with all other countries, religions, international partners to ensure the humanitarian access. We have been very clear that given the horrific terrorist attacks by Hamas, Israel has the right of self-defense under international law to take measures of aims and other means of attacks to Gaza. However, all self-defense measures must be carried out line with international humanitarian law. Civilians must be protected. The consequences for civilians attacks on Gaza are totally unexpected. Norway announced full blockade with Gaza. It is almost 1 week ago that ceasefire agreement was reached between Israel and Hamas following the efforts of Egypt, Qatar, the UN, the US and other regional and international actors. During that 11 days of fight, we saw thousands of rockets begin fired by Hamas from Gaza into Israel, as well as the heavy bombardment to Gaza. Norway continues to condemn all attacks against civilian population. As a special coordinator, as elaborated, the civilian casualties have been significant and children have been especially affected. It is now implemented that ceasefire is fully implemented and respected by all parties. In this response to the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza, Norwegian government have proposed to increase support for Palestinian people by more than 470 million. This will bring Norway total support to the Palestinians in 2023 more than 1.5 billion. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished delegate of Norway. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, the President of the State of Palestine. I request protocol as called for His Excellency.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Today here in the General Assembly in the world's Parliament, countries of principles and concerns peace-loving nations stood up and proved that the international community has not forsaken, humanity has not forfeited. International law has the universal rules. They apply to all, has not forsaken, the promise, the purposes, the principles of the United Nations has not abandoned. The Palestinian people in these darkest hours, not forsaken, the just cause for freedom and justice. We are grateful to all the countries that voted in support of the draft resolution tabled by Jordan and co-sponsored by 40 countries, expressing by an overwhelming majority support for this unequivocal and call for an immediate humanitarian workers. Truce for a halt to all acts of civilians, for the protection of civilians, international law including the human rights law, including the release of all civilians held captive, and has called for unimpeded discipline led by our people in Gaza Strip, where Israel not only continues its aggression but escalating indiscriminate savage attacks on Palestinian innocent children, women, men. As we speak, the occupied power has launched in the darkest of Gaza, where it has cut electricity, internet, and all communications, and still who here refuse to equally and unequivocally condemn these war crimes and crimes against humanity being perpetrated by Israel. But today we will not focus on declarations, we will focus on unequivocal message. This assembly has sent to our people of the overwhelming majority of the people of the world stand with you and stand with the people in Gaza Strip. There will be fellow member states, we are only seeking and to killing us trauma and other to the destruction. This of course is not something that the representatives of the occupying power will ever understand. He still comes the world body after it has clearly spoken and said, bullying and inciting, trying to force everyone to accept that twisted criminal definition. I need to message, destroy people, there is no such right in this world. Not legally, not politically, not morally. There will be never be this the message that was sent by General Assembly to him and anyone else who is attempting to violate international laws meant to protect occupied those blockaded, diseased, persecuted for so long. This is the reality of the Palestinian people. This is the reality we appeal to you to not lose and give meaning to the resolution. The humanitarian aid they need is a catastrophic situation that requires immediate action now together to save civilians, for the protection of civilians, unforgotten over 7,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed by Israel, among them 3,500 children. Who has lost 50 member staff in aggression? Gaza has become travel meeting sees on that the Commissioner of General, do not let this happen. You have to stop it, we have to stop it. Let all us listen to the cries of Palestinian mothers and fathers and children, calling for an end to their operations and listen to the billions many around the world. Mr. President, we must act now to support the courageous workers on the ground, the staff of UNICEF and other UN agencies, as well as the ICRC and our own Palestinian Red Crescent and Palestinian doctors, nurses and medics working around the world. Their lives are also directly threatened and targeted by Israeli aggression. We want to life now, just now, freedom now, now enough is enough. And I want to give special thanks and tribute to Principal Human, passionate position of our President, who have conducted our deliberation with humanity, principles, with professionalism. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Palestine. Now I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of the state of Singapore.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of United Nations, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. Singapore voted in favor of this resolution. After every careful consideration, we deeply regret that this resolution has two glaring and significant omissions. First, it makes no mention of Hamas' role in perpetrating the massive and coordinated terror attacks which led to the brutal killing of 11,400 Israelis and others in the abduction of more than 200 hostages. These are acts of terror that we condemn unequivocally, and the abhorrent deeds of Hamas cannot be justified in completion with international law. Including humanitarian aid. Mr. President, nevertheless, Singapore voted this resolution because the charter and the rule-based multilateral system, including multilateral system, and to the Mr. President, nevertheless, Singapore supported because we have always been consistent and advocate defender of international law, including reframes of all parties' obligation and to the obligation. These are acts of terror in most basic needs of Palestinian civilians population, humanitarian aid, and to protect its people for senseless violence. It demands that all parties obligation and to respect international law, including international humanitarian law, and to protect innocent civilians' lives must be provided. I thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished delegate of this Singapore. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, representative of the state of Switzerland. I request protocol as called for His Excellencies.
Secretary General of the United Nations, honorable representatives, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, on the 7th of October, Hamas carried out unjustified and shocking terrorist attacks against civilian Israeli population. Switzerland condemned these attacks with the strongest term. In the very earliest hours, we supported the resolution that was submitted by Jordan to this assembly neverthelessly. The accountability of Hamas terrorists is also important for us. This is why we also supported Canada's amendment. We regret that the unjustified and shocking terrorist attacks by Hamas and a call for an immediate freeing of hostages was not included. We call for an immediate, lasting, and sustained humanitarian pause, which would lead to a cessation of hostilities. This resolution is essential. We must ensure that the rapid and afforded access is given to the humanitarian aid for the region because the humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. In particular for the millions of people who were displaced today faced with the degradation of the situation in occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem. This is crucial. We also believe that the resolution expresses deep commitment of UN member states to international humanitarian law, and human rights. We reiterate that the international humanitarian law takes account both humanitarian regulations and the rules of combat which must be respected, including distinction, precaution, and proportionality when carrying out hostilities. Israel's large-scale military operations in Gaza on 1st December over past 7 days, Israel bombardment has killed more than 28,000 Palestinians, increasing the number of Palestinian casualties since the start of hostilities to about 17,000. 70% of those killed in the violence are reportedly women and children. Relentless military operations and our expanding evacuation orders have displaced 85% of the Gaza's population. These actions could be possibly amount to a forceful transfer of a population to a crime against humanity. Israel military's massive bombardment, in a manner consistent with international humanitarian law, has not spared schools, colleges, hospitals, refugee camps, residential buildings, and religious establishments where civilians could be safe and protected from indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks. Experts expressed the alarm that the entry and provision of an humanitarian aid has dwindled since the resumption of hostilities was due to shortages in basic supplies, lack of fuel, disrupted communications, movement restrictions, and severe insecurity in the decisive Gaza Strip. They suggest that such actions could be tantamount to a collective punishment which is prohibited under the international humanitarian law. In the short term, L25, a resolution calling immediate and sustained humanitarian truce is an essential precondition for urgently stabilizing the humanitarian situation in Gaza to ensure the basic safety and needs of the civilian population, especially women and children in Gaza in the long term. Consultations and preparations must now be launched towards the deployment of an international protective preservance in the entire occupied Palestinian territories under the supervision of the UN. They called for the support and inclusion of an Palestinian civil society as an integral part of any decision making to ensure the needs of the affected communities are taken into account. Fellow members, UN must do all that they can do to end the epic suffering in Gaza and restore international peace and security before we reach a point of no return. Ladies and gentlemen, Switzerland is committed to a unified action by UN Security Council and will continue to do so. Finally, we must not lose the sight of the fact that the only way to establish peace and security is the two-state solution, the two democratic states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace within these safe and recognized borders as this assembly has called for decades. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of this Switzerland. On the behalf of the General Assembly, I have honored to welcome Her Excellency Representative of Ghana.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, Ghana is a gravely considered situation in the Middle East, triggered in the latest instance by Meadows outbreaks called by Hamas on 7th October 2023. In southern Israel, including and continuing to those hostages and those abducted, impact of responses of Israel, which is created for humanitarian nightmare in Gaza. We understand the moral of dilemma, which is created for Israel and Palestinian people. But Hamas are not Palestinian people, and we are appreciating and recognition by Israel that action must be guided by international community. And we have a responsibility to protect our civilians as we have international law. To have and heartbreaking strategies which brought tears, hate events, a cycle of despair, cultural violence into the Israel and Palestine. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Ghana is working with other members in Security Council, including Brazil. As the President wanted to find consensual resolutions in the Council responses the pain and fear of Israel's and safety, security, well-being for Palestinian Authority. And to resume and conclude peace agreement, so two nations will live side by side within secure and recognized borders, which is voted for draft resolution submitted by Arab group. Not a conference sets of elements, and we cannot ignore the real threat of regional war involving many actors inside and outside theater and conflict, and cannot squander with the impotence of the Palestinian people of. We are calling Israel to take action and restore of the authority and legitimacy of the Palestinian people. We are convinced under the peace treaty of Israel and Palestinian people. We are calling Israel to give genuine steps for people of God Gaza, humanitarian services, peace equally and available, and campaign terror. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished delegate of Ghana. Now, I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Algeria.
Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Algeria voted in the favor of this resolution because we are convinced of uniting our efforts on the international level to achieve our common goals and to carry the necessary measures so as it end the suffering of our brothers and sisters in the occupied Palestinian territories. In particular, due to the recent aggression that has been carried over by the last few weeks, the occupying power on this aggression which continues to increase the expanded losses of life, something that we must acknowledge the tragic situation in the Gaza Strip. We must first state that we dissociate ourselves from any term in this resolution which aims to place the responsibility for the massacres on the Palestinian people. The occupying power is only responsible for this carnage, these violations of international law secondly, and my country dissociates itself from any language and would give any type of legitimacy. We once again condemn the massacres that have been perpetrated against the Palestinian people, and we call on the international community to unite the bloodbath and provide necessary protection for the Palestinian people. Third, we deplore the suppression of the language referring to ceasefires, a political non-moral point of view. Can we oppose a ceasefire? Ceasefires are not a choice but an absolute necessity, so as it and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people are facing today the current humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. And fourthly, we are not pleased that the enough reference to accountability. We call on the Israel power to be responsible before the appropriate authorities. And we must bolster the Security Council's responsibilities to maintain the international peace and security. And On behalf of all UN member states of accordance 24th article of the UN Charter, the Security Council cannot be continued of women and girls are being killed in every day in the Palestine in our occupied Palestine territories. In conclusion, we wish to our brother people of Palestine and in fight for each state may try to establish an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. We call on the international community to guarantee the rights of the Palestinian people because this is the only one way to ensure the international peace and security in the Middle East. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Algeria. I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished representative of the state of India.
I thank you, Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. In a world where differences and disputes should be resolved by dialogue, this august body should deeply conserve at recourse to violence, that too when it happens on a scale and intensity that is an affront to basic human value violence as means to achieve political objective. Objective damages indiscriminately and does not pave the way for any durable solution. The terror attacks in Israel on 7th October were shocking and deserve condemnation. Our thoughts were also with those taken hostages. We call for their immediately unconditionally release. Terrorism is a malgrade and knows no border, nationalist or race. Mr. President, casualties in ongoing conflict in Gaza were telling serious and continuing the concept. Civilians, especially women and children, are paying their life. In the Gaza Strip, an interesting choice to abstain from voting on it at the General Assembly. For this, we urge the parties to de-escalate the issues violence working towards condemnation. We hope that this assembly will send a clear message against terror, violence, and that extends the project of dialogue. Mr. President, India is deeply concerned at determining security solution and as many loss of civilian lives, especially women and children are paying their lives. In the ongoing conflict, the escalation will be only represented. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, distinguished delegate of India. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency, representative of the state of Germany. I request protocol escort for His Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President and Secretary General of United Nations and distinguished delegates and ladies and gentlemen. Today was a declared for General Assembly. I thank Jordan for its work and take the opportunity to explain our work. 7th of October Israel fell victim to an unprecedented terrorist attack carried out by Hamas. Many civilians have been killed, injured, kidnapped, or almost. Now Hamas has continued launching rockets against civilians, target Israel. We can hear the cry of Israel families, where they are Cloud Maimat tortured virtually and abducted by Hamas. And Germany and Israel security is non-negotiable. Hamas is must unconditional and immediately release all hostages and stop the indiscriminate rocket attacks and refrain and using rockets and human shields. Civilians are using as human shields like other state in the world. And Israel has the right to defend against terrorism within the legal framework of international law. Mr. President, addressing the PL of Palestinians, it's no way contradicts this clear and unwavering stance. We can also hear the cry of Gaza parents. They're mourning and they're feeling about their children's lives. And humanitarian situation in Gaza. Dry and day by day, Germany has continued calls for rapid safe. And Berlin is a not only significant Muslim, home to significant Muslim population. It is also an causes left-wing politics. It supports Palestinians that those cause popular. And Germany is working with us and several other countries. And let me to ensure everything possible to Gaza people have in safe places. They want to be killed with their access to clean drinking water and medication. Mr. President, we believe that draft solution tabled by Jordan from the Arab group lately and underlines and pressing humanitarian action. And Gaza calls for humanitarian needs. And terrorist attack carried out by Hamas. And Hamas' responsibility is killing civilians and taking hostages. And We can therefore thank Canada for tabling an amendment that clearly names that suggests more unequivocal language. And it is also. Thank you, Mr. President.
The last speaker for this meeting. We shall hear the remaining speakers on next section in this hall. This meeting is adjourned.
I'm going to express my heartfelt appreciation for your dedication and enthusiasm during our recent Model United Nations conference. Your participation played a vital role in making the event a resourcing success.
మేడం స్టెప్ ఎక్కండి పైకి.
Now, I would like to call upon the stage our correspondent, Mr. Moses Sir, and head teacher of Phoenix, Narada Ma'am, to present mementos to the students who are participating in the Phoenix Model United Nations. Let's all welcome them. Oman S. Harsha. I request our executive head teacher to come on to the dais. Let's all welcome her.
చూస్తానికి వచ్చినటువంటి పేరెంట్స్కి, గ్రామస్తులకి, చుట్టుపక్కల గ్రామస్తులకి ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి వందనాలు. ఈ రోజుల్లో విద్యా విధానంలో వచ్చినటువంటి మార్పుల్ని, అంతర్జాతీయ స్థాయి విషయాల్ని మన పార్లమెంటరీ స్కూల్ విద్యార్థులు మన దగ్గర ప్రజెంట్ చేయడం జరిగింది. మనం అసెంబ్లీలు చూస్తూ ఉంటాం, టీవీలో చూస్తే అసెంబ్లీలు కొట్టుకుంటూ ఉంటారు. నేను అనుకున్నాను ఏంటి కొట్టుకోవట్లేదు ఏంటి అనుకుంటున్నాను. అంటే కాలానుగుణంగా వచ్చినటువంటి మార్పులు అనుగుణంగా ఈ గ్లోబలైజేషన్లో ఒక హై స్కూల్ స్థాయి పిల్లలు యునైటెడ్ నేషన్స్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్ అంటే ఐక్యరాజ్య సమితి దాదాపుగా 193 దేశాల సభ్యత్వం కలిగి ఉంది. ఒక్కొక్క టేబుల్ ఒక దేశానికి ఒక రిప్రజెంటేషన్. జనరల్ అసెంబ్లీలో ఒక దేశానికి 5 సభ్యులు ఎట్టవచ్చు. ఆ సంవత్సరం ఒకసారి జరిగింది. ఆ సమావేశాన్ని మనకి వాళ్ళకి అందే విధంగా మన భాష కానీ ఇంగ్లీష్ భాషలో మన పిల్లలు అందించడం మనందరం అభినందించాల్సిన విషయం. చాలా కాలం ప్రాక్టీస్ చేశారు. ఇంతకుముందు ఇదే పిల్లలు స్టూడెంట్స్ రాజమండ్రిలో మాక్ పార్లమెంట్ నిర్వహించారు. ఈ మాక్ పార్లమెంట్కి ముఖ్య అతిథిగా ఉండవల్లి అరుణ్ కుమార్ గారు మనందరం టీవీలో చూస్తూ ఉంటాం. ఉండవల్లి అరుణ్ కుమార్ గారు వచ్చి ఇటువంటి స్కూల్ నేను ఎక్కడా చూడలేదని, మరలా మన యానివర్సరీ కూడా ఆయనే పిలిస్తే ఆయనే వచ్చాడు రాజమండ్రిలో. కాబట్టి పేరెంట్స్ వచ్చినటువంటి గెస్ట్ చాలా మంది వెళ్ళిపోయారు. టైం అయిన సమయానుకూలంగా ఉండలేకపోయారు, కొన్ని ఇబ్బందులు వెళ్ళిపోయినట్టున్నారు. ఈ విషయాన్ని మీకు వీడియోల ద్వారా తెలియపరచడం జరుగుతుంది. వచ్చిన వాళ్ళందరికీ పంపించడం జరుగుతుంది. మీరు అవగాహన చేసుకోండి. మీ బిడ్డల భవిష్యత్తుకి బంగారు మాట వేయాలంటే మీరు మీ ఇష్టం పాఠశాలను సెలెక్ట్ చేసుకోండి. మనం హాస్పిటల్కి వెళ్తే మంచి డాక్టర్ గారు అనుకుంటాం, హోటల్కి వెళ్తే మంచి హోటల్లో భోజనం అనుకుంటాం. అట్లాగే స్కూల్కి వెళ్తే మంచి స్కూల్ కూడా సెలెక్ట్ చేసుకోవడం అవసరం. ఎందుకంటే ఈ ప్రపంచ స్థాయి విషయాలను మనం ఎప్పుడైతే తెలుసుకుంటామో అప్పుడే మన బిడ్డలు అత్యున్నతమైనటువంటి శిఖరాలకి వెళ్ళగలుగుతారు. దాన్ని మనం గమనించాలి. ముఖ్యంగా ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని మనం మధ్యకు వచ్చి ప్రజెంట్ చేసినటువంటి రాజమండ్రి ఫినిక్స్ స్కూల్ స్టాఫ్కి, స్టూడెంట్స్కి, ఈ కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొన్నటువంటి అందరికీ సభాముఖంగా వందనాలు తెలియజేస్తున్నాను. ప్రత్యేకంగా వచ్చినటువంటి పేరెంట్స్కి, ఓపికతో ఉపయోగించుతున్నటువంటి మీ అందరికీ కూడా ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి వందనాలు తెలియజేస్తున్నాను.
present the mementos. I now would like to request our corresponding sir, Mr. Moses sir, to present the mementos. Let's all welcome him. And I would like to invite our beloved Dina sir to come on to the dais. Give him a big round of applause. Invite our head teacher of Phoenix, executive head teacher of the Phoenix Global School. Let's all welcome her to come on. I request her to come on to the dais. Come on, Phoenicians, please, let's all welcome her. Now, I would like to invite our beloved head teacher, Namada ma'am, to come on to the dais. Let's all welcome her. Now, it's time to present the mementos. Clap for yourselves, children, for your hard work. See done. Come on, Vinicius, clap for yourself, for your hard work. Nagreti. Varshika. Next, Monica. Mahesh. Ganesh. Come on, clap. Applause for yourself. Manoj. Prashant. Tarun. Jay Surya Pawan. Vasudha. Ganesh.
Hi Andy, namaste.
Reena. Venkat. Anjali. Anjali. Uma. Jashwant. Laya. Kartikeshwari. CH Asha. Okay, Charles. Come on, clap. Sasira. Sasira. Jeshwant. Tejesh. Pranita. Come on, clap. Next, Bhumika. Come on, give them a big round of applause. Applause for yourself, for the hard work and the dedication. Come on, continue, clapping. Just continue. Appreciate yourself. Come on. President. Come on, clap, appreciate them.
One second. Whatever.